I'm not sure I can answer that, partly because I'm not sure that it is right to talk about a global Islamic finance economy. And there are a number of ways I can approach that. If you look at for example, how Islamic banks interact with each other, they don't interact as though they were a single economy. What I think we shall see is a set of impacts country by country, perhaps region by region. As I've said, what those impacts will be will really depend on how Islamic banks react to open banking. I have already said I see a risk in some economies that they will be left behind. I think in certain regions, the Middle East and the GCC in particular is a clear example. It's very possible that the Islamic banks will be very much upfront, that open banking will allow them to make a set of alliances which will bring new technology and improve customer experience. If I were to look to some areas, say of sub-Saharan Africa, where Islamic banks are really quite small players in an economy which is dominated by much larger banks, or indeed even to some of the Asian countries where something similar applies, I think there is a real risk that they will be displaced a little, that they will lose ground fundamentally because the customer experiences that people want will be built on other people's platforms. There's one other related point I'd like to make, because we have talked a bit about about banks and fintechs, and it's in part a regulatory point. There are places where regulation is clearly built around the entity, and it says, you are a bank, you have a banking license. If you have a banking license, you can do A, B, C, D, E, and you must do F, G, H. There are other places that are much more activity orientated, and they say, if you do so-and-so, if you take a deposit, then you need a license for taking deposits and the following rules apply. If you offer financial advice, then you have a license which covers that and the following rules apply. That approach, which is the one I am used to from various jurisdictions, creates a greater degree of flexibility, somewhat blurs the boundary between what people think of as banks and what people think of as fintechs. And that is probably helpful in the current context where we are seeing some banks saying, well, I cannot have a so-and-so license because it means that I have to run a branch network, do so-and-so and such and such. And that regulatory structure is significant. And it relates in part to what we think of as the structure of the Islamic economy or the Islamic finance economy. Yeah. Will we have in the future a group of people who are banks and a group of people who are takaful companies and a group of people who are capital markets operators? Or will we wind up with a much more diverse economy where the interface with the customer may be owned by something that is in any one of several categories, and maybe none of the ones that I've mentioned, but that's a different question.